but I did. I grew up in the Middle East. When I was five, we moved to Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Moved back when I was 15 to Louisiana, and I have a lot of friends who were from Dubai at the time. Some were people who had fled Lebanon as it descended into chaos. Others had. I'm glad you were writing for me. Thank you. Oh my gosh, millennials are so needy. All right, focus. So one of my friends, Amir, his father and grandfather worked for the Shah of Iran. His father wound up in banking, and the grandfather was in the security service, and they wound up fleeing over the Ural Mountains into the Soviet Union during the revolution in 1979. Amir would have been 3 or 4 at the time. The family had to flee and made their way to Dubai. Wonderful people. Some of my greatest memories are hanging out with friends who had fled Iran. They consider themselves Persian, not Iranian. And just super people. They really are. But when I was a kid, I got to travel. And as I got older, got to travel. Been to most of the Middle East. Been to Oman, been to Bahrain, been to Saudi Arabia, been to Egypt, been to Syria, been to Jordan, been to Kuwait. Briefly went into Iraq, but it doesn't really count because I wasn't there long. I've never been to Israel. I couldn't go to Israel growing up in the Middle East. You wouldn't be allowed back in the country. But have many fond memories. When I was a kid, the Iranians tried to blow up my school. It was an American school in Dubai. They tried to blow it up. For a time, because hijackings were so bad. So living in Dubai, it was kind of a neat experience. If you took a field trip, it was to somewhere abroad typically. So in 6th grade, my sister's class went to Kenya. When I was in 9th grade, we went for over a week to Greece and Turkey, the Greek islands. In fact, I remember we were landing in Kuwait on the way back to Dubai. The sun was coming up, and you could see Saddam Hussein's tanks all lined up at the border doing military exercises. That's what they said they were doing. We got back. My dad's company decided all the Americans needed to pack up and leave. The situation was destabilizing, and my dad continued to go back and forth every 28 days. We moved back to Louisiana when I was 15. But it was a heck of a way to grow up. I've still been to more countries than states. I've been portions of other than South America and the Antarctic. I've been to the rest of the continents, and some as I've gotten older and traveled by myself as well. But we went to Hong Kong when I was a kid. I've been to Malaysia a lot. I've been to India, been to Pakistan. I've been all over Europe. I've been to Egypt. It was a fun way to grow up and then to travel further as I got older. I am fascinated by the Middle East, but it's a fascination that also comes with some alarming concerns as we see instability in the Middle East right now. And a lot of the instability, you need to understand this. I try to resist when it comes to a lot of foreign affairs and international relations, try to make partisan points because a lot of the issues abroad aren't really partisan. There are larger issues at stake. But the Biden administration has handled itself horribly when it comes to the Middle East. The Obama administration as well handled itself horribly, and much of the instability in the Middle East right now is instability that comes because of the policies of the Biden and the Obama administrations, in particular their dealings with Iran. We now know that some of the advisors whispering in the ears of Obama and Biden were actually on the Iranian payroll, spies. They were influencing this, if this was the Trump administration or this was the Bush administration, and you had Iranian agents helping shape foreign policy that was more favorable to Iran, it would be a major international scandal. But it happened in the Obama and the Biden administrations, and the media has largely been quiet about the infestation of sympathizers to Iran, Iranian spies and agents on the payroll. But it's true. It really happened. The Obama administration, led by one of those people, decided to rethink Iranian policy because the arrogance of the Obama administration was always, more than anything else, that he could do better than anyone else, that he saw the world more clearly. He saw the intersectional lines of the world, and Obama could do better than Bush, and he could do better than Clinton, and he could do better than Reagan, and he could do better than Carter. Everybody could. He could do better than anybody. There's a profound arrogance within Barack Obama that he could rethink the world and do differently. And one of the ways he thought to rethink the world was to rebuild relationships with Iran, but he was guided by people on Iran's payroll. And when Trump came into office, he stopped it. And when Biden came into office, he picked it back up. And Joe Biden is in part responsible for the deaths of all the Israelis on October 7th. Joe Biden and Barack Obama both are in part responsible. Blood is on their hands. They funded Iran knowing Iran would fund terrorism. In fact, there's a story in the Wall Street Journal today. In mid-2019, Israel's military used a precision strike on a narrow street to kill a Hamas commander whom it called Iran's money man in Gaza. The commander ran an off-the-books system of remittances in which trusted agents shuttled physical cash and goods across borders to settle customers' balances. This so-called Hawala network, which is known in the Middle East, funneled tens of millions of dollars in financing from Iran to Hamas's military wing. His replacement, a Palestinian businessman named Zuhair Samlak, changed strategy to evade the Israelis. He turned to digital currencies. Samlak's money exchanges increasingly sent digital tokens to operators abroad to settle Hawala balances, according to current and former Israeli law enforcement officials, along with former U.S. officials. Crypto sent to the digital wallets controlled by Hamas-affiliated money exchanges could also be swapped for cash at their offices in the Gaza Strip. This pivot helped Hamas and affiliates such as the Palestinian Islamic Jihad to receive large sums from Iran during the 2 years that preceded the attacks on Israel. The officials said it was an attempt to use a new financial technology to lessen the risks of moving physical money and goods. They used Bitcoin. But the Bitcoin in and of itself had to be purchased. And where did the purchasing come from? It came from the Obama administration releasing money to Iran, and then the Biden administration releasing further funds to Iran. It came from the Biden administration allowing Iran to sell oil. It came from the Biden administration turning a blind eye. Iran has pulled in a lot of money. It has kept its people starving in poverty and instead used the money to fund Hamas and Hezbollah, to fund its nuclear program and to fund its military. And Joe Biden and Obama were complicit in that. Iran has also funded Hezbollah far more than Hamas. Hezbollah has set up shop and taken over Lebanon, and Hezbollah is a puppet regime of Iran. Hezbollah is also a terrorist organization. It was Hezbollah, actually, that tried to blow up my school when I was a kid, funded by the Iranians. They've been doing this for quite a while. They're now essentially, just as Hamas is the government of Gaza, Hezbollah is basically the government of Lebanon. They control everything. The Germans have told German citizens they probably need to get out of Lebanon. There was an Israeli attack in Lebanon killing one of the Hamas's leaders who was hiding there. Hezbollah is probably going to start doing military activities on the northern border with Israel in response. Iran will fund it all. Iran is also funding the Houthi. When I was a kid, in the 1980s, there were two Yemens. There was South Yemen and there was North Yemen. South Yemen was friendly with the West. North Yemen was communist, tied to the Soviet Union. After the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union, over time, they have merged into just one country, the country of Yemen. And the Iranians have been funding Houthi rebels in a civil war to control Yemen. The Iranians, they don't care about the people of Yemen. They care about the strategic opportunity of controlling shipping access to the Red Sea. This is the most bizarre and asinine part of all of this. The Biden administration is allowing a proxy group of pirates and rebels funded by Iran to disrupt global shipping patterns. The majority of global shipping traffic is now steering clear of the Red Sea and going all the way around Africa, adding weeks to their trips to Europe because the Biden administration won't just blow up the Houthi rebels. We have engaged in some sort of alleged coalition with Europe, but half the Europeans involved don't want to actually be named. And while all of this is happening, ISIS is rearing its head again. ISIS is responsible for the bombing in Iran, 2 suicide bombers. ISIS doesn't like Iran for religious reasons. ISIS is Sunni Muslim and militantly so. The Iranians are Shiite Muslims. They have philosophical, theological disagreements, very 5th century of both of them. And they don't like each other. And there have been a series of skirmishes along the Iranian border, particularly with Pakistan, because the Islamic State has set up shop in western Afghanistan and in western Pakistan. The Taliban has largely made peace with ISIS, allowing them to come in, much to the chagrin of the Iranians. And so now you got the Iranians, you go with this terror organization. On its eastern side, you've got them fighting Israel. This just means Iran and the Russians and others are going to be working together more collaboratively. They don't. By the way, Russia doesn't like ISIS as well, even though it's collaborated with ISIS in Africa to destabilize regimes the Americans have propped up. Russia doesn't like ISIS. Russia views ISIS as a threat. And all of this is going to push closer relations to Iran and Russia. All of this comes from the Obama administration. All of this instability comes from the Obama administration deciding it could do better than anyone else and showing just absolute arrogance and naivete in trying to handle Iran and being infiltrated through its arrogance. It couldn't see it coming, Iranian agents. And now the fallout comes to all of us, and the Biden administration is incapable of dealing aggressively with it. The Middle East is beginning to destabilize, and many of our former allies and current allies are looking more and more to China to settle the problems, and that just hurts our geostrategic interests, all because Joe Biden got buttered over the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and the Khashoggi matter and decided he was going to show him up. Well, that guy showed us and invited Xi Jinping to come to Saudi Arabia and begin the realignment of the Middle East against our interests. It's all because of Obama and Biden.
You're listening